Welcome to African Tales and Hearts, where stories of love, family, and destiny come alive. They did not sing. They did not dance. They did not ululate the way they did when they gave away cherished daughters. In the Okeke compound in Bano, the sun sat like a copper coin over rust-red roofs. Chickens scratched in the dust. Men shifted on plastic chairs, women whispered behind chewing sticks. Between a cracked calabash and a list written on brown paper stood Stella, 23, beautiful in a quiet way, with 15 years of swallowed tears sitting behind her eyes. Auntie Ngozi adjusted her head tie and cleared her throat. "Since Joe's people have reconsidered," she announced, voice sharp as a blade, "we will not waste time. Stanley, you came with 2 men and your wine. You brought yam and a Bible. It is small, but it is something. Take her." She pointed at Stella as if pointing at a bag of rice. Stella's fingers tightened on the thin wrapper in her hands. She did not cry. Crying never made Auntie Ngozi kinder. Alice, Auntie's daughter, Stella's age, stood off to the side, bangles bright, chin lifted, a victory smile tucked into one corner of her mouth. Outside the gate a white car idled, the driver impatiently tapping the horn twice, Joe's car, waiting to carry Alice and her mother to formal introductions. The sacks of rice and crates of malt they had brought the day before were stacked like trophies near the wall. Mr. Okeke sighed and signed the paper with a bored face. "Let us finish. I have things to do." Stanley stepped forward. His shirt was clean but faded, his hands rough with carpentry, his shoes dusted from walking. His eyes, however, were calm, steady in a way that made people lower their voices. He did not grab, did not display, did not bargain. He simply bowed slightly to the elders, then turned to Stella. "I will not hurt you," he said. The words were quiet. They stirred the still air like a small wind. No music. No blessing. No joy. That was how they gave Stella away. After her parents died, Mr. Okeke had promised the elders, "We will raise Stella like our own." For 15 years, like our own meant, wake before dawn, scrub the yard, fetch water, map out the farm, cook before school, return to cook after. It meant Alice, Tobe, and Chica sleeping late while Stella ironed uniforms hot enough to smart the fingers. It meant Auntie Ngozi clicking her tongue over any little mistake. "Be grateful," Auntie would say. "Do you want us to throw you to the street?" Gratitude, Stella learned, could be a chain. Neighbors often praised Stella, her quiet manners, her careful hands. Auntie's smile tightened whenever praise hovered. "Beauty without money is useless," she would slice. "Let her use her hands. That is what God gave her." Then suitors began to visit. Joe arrived first, perfume thick, shirt louder than a rooster, a white car that threw dust into doorways. He carried himself like someone used to doors opening. He greeted Mr. Okeke with one hand, checked his phone with the other, and stared at Stella like a man staring at a prize he had already paid for. "You're wasting this one in the kitchen," Joe said with a lazy grin. "She belongs in the city." The words bounced around the compound like bright beads. That night Auntie Ngozi locked her door and called Alice. "That man will not marry your cousin," she whispered. "But Mama, he was looking at." "Use what you have," Auntie said, tapping Alice's forehead and then her chest. "Smile. Perfume. Sit close. Laugh. Be a woman." The next day Stanley came. He removed his cap at the door. He set down his modest gifts, palm wine, yam, a Bible wrapped in cloth. He greeted each elder with both hands. He looked at Stella not like a prize but like a person. "I am not rich," he said respectfully. "But my hands are not lazy. I will honor your daughter." Auntie Ngozi laughed so hard tears glossed her eyes. "Do you even own a chair?" she asked. Mr. Okeke waved a hand. "If you are serious, bring 2 men to witness, bring what the list says. We will see." Joe came back with a driver and sacks that made neighbors cough envy. His mother followed, fingers jeweled, eyes scanning like she was pricing tomatoes. She praised Auntie's cloth, Alice's bracelets, the compound's potential, and asked too many questions that weren't questions. That night Auntie Ngozi and Alice drank sweet tea with Joe's mother and poured sweet poison with their tongues. Family illness skips some girls, Auntie murmured. Alice lowered lashes. We don't like to talk about it, she said, but since you are family. By morning Joe's family had reconsidered Stella and chosen Alice. Auntie Ngozi acted pained for an hour. Then her shoulders raised. Better, she told Alice in the kitchen. Let us hand Stella to the carpenter and finish this story. I will not breed competition under my roof. They pressed a folded wrapper into Stella's palms and sent her along. Go, Auntie said. Your husband is waiting. Stanley walked beside her to the gate. He did not touch her elbow, did not tug, did not hurt. Outside, Joe's car honked again, impatient and shiny. Stella did not look back. Stanley's house sat at the edge of the village, mud walls smoothed by careful hands, a bamboo door that sang when the wind passed, a raffia bed neatly tied, a cooking corner swept clean. The floor was cool, the kind of cool that makes weary feet feel listened to. Sit, Stanley said gently. He set water before her. If you want to rest, rest. If you want to speak, speak. You are safe here. That night Stella woke up twice, first at the memory of Auntie's voice, then at the phantom of a pot lid banging. Each time she waited for her name to be shouted into the dark. Each time the night remained soft. Cricket stitched a quiet song between trees. She slept again. On the third morning, fever found her. Perhaps it was exhaustion finally catching what it had been chasing for years. Stanley fanned her with a woven fan and wiped her face with a cool cloth. He prayed small prayers that did not perform, only comforted. When the fever broke, Stella cried, not loud, not dramatic, just small rain sliding down a face that had learned too early to be a wall. No one has ever waited by my bed, she whispered. Then let this be the beginning, Stanley said. Alice married Joe with noise, drums beating skins until dust jumped, dancers stamping the ground like harvest. Joe's mother smiled with all her teeth, greeting people like votes. They took Alice to the city the next morning. She expected a bright apartment with a balcony and a stainless steel kitchen. What she got instead was a fading flat with water that came when it liked and a mother-in-law who had the discipline of a general and the kindness of a tax collector. You will wake at 5, the woman said. Sweep. Cook. Washington good wives know how to make small things big. What house help? Alice asked, confused laughter leaking out. Joe's mother's eyebrows climbed. Help? You are the help. Joe kissed Alice's cheek quickly and disappeared to the shop. The shop, she would soon learn, was a kiosk with a padlock and a ledger that made no sense. The family businesses were smoke and mirrors. They had seen Stella's quiet competence and wanted to harness it, for them. Now they had Alice, pretty, proud, untrained. And they made her into what she had made Stella for years, a live-in servant with lipstick. Within a month her hands were rough. Within 3 months her eyes had dried of easy tears. Within 6 months, she was late to a cycle she started counting on the kitchen calendar. Pregnancy is normal, Joe's mother said. You will still cook. Alice understood a kind of pain for the first time, the pain of not being believed when tiredness is beating you. She served a table where she never sat. She fed a family that never fed her soul. It would be many months before Mr. Okeke's house realized something else. Stella had been the quiet hand that brought extra money home. Without her, holes appeared in the family basket. School fees slipped. Rice finished too early. Salt had to be begged. The house that had laughed now learned the sound of an empty pot. Suffering did not knock. It moved in. In Stanley's small home, smallness was not sorrow. I can fry puff puff, Stella offered one evening, voice careful, like someone suggesting a dangerous thing. Perhaps we can sell by the junction. Stanley's smile reached his eyes. I will build you a table. The next morning he measured and sawed. By dusk a sturdy table stood by the door, Stella's carved quietly into the edge. Stella mixed batter by lamplight, flour, yeast, sugar, humming the old tune her mother loved. When the oil warmed, the first drop bloomed gold. The smell traveled like a messenger. Children came first, then men returning from farms, then women with baskets and good ears. By the third evening, they had a queue. Stanley counted coins like they were seeds. "Let us keep this," he said, tapping a tin. "Let the seeds become seedlings." Days shaped themselves around work and unhurried kindness. When customers came with gossip, Stella smiled and counted change. When men tried nonsense eyes, Stanley's presence at the edge of the stall reminded them to look with respect. One afternoon, a shopkeeper from the next town stopped for shade, bought one, bought two, then leaned forward with business in his pupils. "Who made these?" "My wife," Stanley said, his mouth making a shape that felt like home. "Supply me 40 each morning. I will pay before delivery." 40 became 60. The tin filled faster. Stanley added a second table. Stella's wrists learned rhythm, her laughter learned to come out without first asking permission. On a Sunday evening, they poured the tin on the mat and counted by tens. "This will buy a second-hand oven," Stanley said. His voice was soft but full, like the oven already sat in the corner. Stella covered her face and cried into her palms. Not sad tears. The kind that fall when the heart recognizes its own future coming home. 6 months later, Stanley came back from a job at the next town with sawdust still clinging to his sleeves and a new line between his brows. "I was offered work in the city, steady work," he said. "Security for a large house. They will give a small boy's quarters. It is an opportunity." Stella's mind flicked to Alice and Joe. The city could be teeth. But this offer sounded like a door. "What do you think?" she asked. Stanley watched her face, as if the answer he believed in lived there. "I think we should go, if you agree." She agreed. They packed their few things, the mat, the pot with a well-behaved lid, the small wardrobe with a stubborn handle Stanley promised to fix in the city where screws are plenty. Auntie Ngozi watched them load a borrowed truck, a tight smile on her lips as if to say, "Good riddance." But as the truck rolled past, Mr. Okeke's eyes followed with a look that had a new ingredient, regret. The road to the city ran like ribbon through fields and towns. Stella leaned on the window, counting old fears as they fell behind, fear of plates unwashed, fear of dawns that began with shouting, fear of being grateful for crumbs. The city rose like a story she hadn't finished reading. The gate they reached was big and black, the compound wide and quiet, flowers marching along the walkway like polite soldiers. The main house was white and clean in a way that made people lower their voices. At the back, a neat boys' quarters waited, one bedroom, a sitting room, a small kitchen, a bathroom with tiles that remembered water kindly. Stanley unlocked the door. The room smelled like new paint and cold air. "It is small," he said. "It is ours," Stella answered. That night, the fan ticked gently, and the city hummed somewhere far away like a giant sleeping. Stella slept the sleep of someone whose name would not be shouted before dawn. In the morning she woke to the sound of plantain frying. Stanley looked up from the pan and smiled. "Breakfast." She laughed. The sound startled her. It had been so long since her laughter surprised even her. 2 days later, Stanley knocked on the main house door with Stella at his side. The door opened, and a woman in her late 50s with eyes like quiet rain stepped out. She was elegant without noise, everything in her posture said, "Things have a place." "Good morning, Ma," Stanley said. "This is my wife, Stella." The woman's face warmed. "So this is the wife I have heard about." She took Stella's hand in both of hers. "Welcome, my dear. I am Mrs. Walker. I feel at home. If you need anything, ask." Her voice carried no suspicion, only calm. Stella's shoulders dropped a little without her permission. Inside, the living room was neat, the kind of neat that isn't afraid of living. A framed picture of a handsome young man hung above a console, Daniel, Stella would learn, Mrs. Walker's only son. Stella greeted the picture silently. After a short chat they returned to the quarters. Stella sat on the edge of the bed and looked at her hands. For years those hands had only known service. Suddenly they could choose creation. Do you think I could bake again? She asked. Maybe start with the compound staff? Then we see. Stanley's answer was a smile that started in his chest and climbed into the room. I will build another table, he said. City screws are plenty. Peace doesn't announce itself with drums. It slips into small corners and lights lamps there. Stella began by sending small plates to the gate men, puff puff here, chin chin there. Word traveled like gossip, but kinder. Mrs. Walker's cook traveled abroad. The kitchen needed hands. Mrs. Walker asked, softly like a person making a prayer, if Stella could help. I will pay, she added quickly. Gift is gift. Work is work. Stella accepted. She organized the pantry the way she organized her thoughts, neat rows, labels that remembered why they were there. She cooked without waste, asked for nothing, and smiled with her eyes. Where did you learn this? Mrs. Walker asked one afternoon, watching Stella fold dough like a lullaby. In a place that thought it was breaking me, Stella said. But God was teaching my hands. Mrs. Walker patted her shoulder. Your heart is good. Good hearts change houses. At night, Stella and Stanley sat on their small veranda, eating quietly and planning softly. They were saved. They bought second-hand ovens from a man who swore the oven spoke English but took it back when it only hissed. They laughed and returned the next day for another, wiser purchase. Stella found a night class at a vocational center 2 bus stops away, business bookkeeping for traders and food safety basics. She went twice a week, a jotter on her lap, a pen behind her ear, a future in her bag. She returned one evening and found Daniel at the boys' quarters door, handsome like the photo, a smile practiced on city girls. His eyes swept too long. So you are the famous Stella, he said. My mom cannot stop praising you. Good evening, sir, she said, stepping slightly aside. Respectful distance had saved her more than once. Call me Daniel, he offered, leaning on the doorframe like leisure. You know, we could. Stella? Stanley's voice floated from inside. He stepped into view, eyes calm but firm. Oh, peace, brother, Daniel said, grin tightening. Just greeting our star. When he left, Stella exhaled. Stanley's hand brushed hers. You are safe, he said. I know, she answered. And she did. Back home, holes widened. Without Stella's extra coins from market days and without her steady hands, things slipped. Mr. Okeke discovered that posture cannot be eaten. Auntie Ngozi discovered that pride cannot boil yam. When Alice called, her voice was not the trumpet it had been in the village. It was a fraying rope. Mama, things are not what we expected. What do you mean? Auntie snapped. They make me do everything here. Joe's mother, she says house help is me. And Alice's voice dropped to a whisper. I think I'm pregnant. Silence. Then, good. Maybe they will respect you. Mama, Alice said, a child again, they don't have money. All that talk, there is nothing. I cook with borrowed oil. Auntie's mouth opened, then closed. The lesson began forming, but she chased it away. Lessons chased become hunters. In the city, Stella's tins kept filling. Mrs. Walker noticed the neat ledger Stella kept, dates lined like soldiers, amounts that told the truth. You have a mind for order, she said. Have you thought of registering a small business? Just start, trade name, a bank account. It helps. Stella's heart leapt. The idea had been sitting like a shy visitor in her doorway, waiting for an invitation. What should we call it? She asked Stanley that night. He thought for a moment. Stella's Kitchen, he said simply. Because it is not just puff puff. It is a way of doing things. They went to a small office with plastic chairs and fans that groaned like old men. Paperwork was paperwork. Stella signed here, there, everywhere, and left with a name that now lived on paper and in her chest. She began supplying staff at 2 nearby houses. Word leapt compounds. A small cafe on the next street asked for 20 meat pies for lunch. She delivered 30 and they sold out. "Your spice is careful," the cafe owner said. "Come every day." Stella increased night class to 3 times a week. On Fridays she and Stanley cooked together, heads bumping, laughter running over the rim of the small room. He built trays that slid perfectly into the second-hand oven. He fixed the stubborn wardrobe handle, dusted his hands, and declared, "City screws are indeed plenty. Peace puts on weight." 2 weeks after Stella registered Stella's kitchen, a small storm blew through the Lawson compound, quiet at first, then urgent. Mrs. Lawson stood in her sitting room, phone pressed to her ear, voice calm but tight. "Are you sure there's nothing you can do?" "It's tomorrow." "I understand." "Yes, thank you." She ended the call, exhaled, and straightened a flower vase that didn't need straightening. The charity networking afternoon she hosted every quarter, women from small NGOs, teachers, nurses, 2 microcredit officers, and a councilwoman, was less about tea and more about connecting helpers to resources. It wasn't grand. It was precise. And now her caterer had canceled. Stanley had come to check the generator. He knocked lightly, peeped in, then stepped back. "Ma?" Mrs. Lawson turned with a practiced smile. "Ah, Stanley. Nothing is wrong that God cannot handle. Our caterer fell ill. The event is tomorrow. I don't want those women to arrive at the dry tables." Stanley thought for a moment, then said, carefully, "Ma, my wife, she can prepare small chops, puff puff, spring rolls, samosa, even chin chin. She was supplied in our town before we moved. If you allow, she can prepare a sample this evening. If you don't like it, we won't trouble you." Mrs. Lawson's eyes warmed. "You always suggest like a gentleman." "Yes. Let's try samples." Stanley nodded once. "Thank you, Ma." He went to the boys' quarters, found Stella labeling a new tin transport, and told her the whole story in one breath. Stella did not clap or squeal. She simply stood, blinked twice, and whispered, "God, thank you." They got to work. Stanley cleaned and sharpened his knife the way a tailor threads a needle. Stella measured with a seriousness that made flour feel honored. Oil warmed. Filling sizzled. Aromas rose and slid under doors like polite guests. They plated a simple tray and carried it to the main house as evening fell, no drama, just excellence. Mrs. Lawson tasted a puff-puff, then a samosa, then stood still the way people stand when something better than they expected has just arrived. She looked at Stella for a long second. "Can you handle 40 women tomorrow?" Stella swallowed, then met her eyes. "Yes, Ma." "Price?" Mrs. Lawson asked, businesslike. Stella named a fair figure, no greed, no timidity. Mrs. Lawson nodded. "Done. If you need anything, ask my steward." And she squeezed Stella's hand, low voice pleased, "Thank you for saving my little event." Stella walked back to the quarters, calm on the outside and shaking with gratitude on the inside. Stanley only grinned, rolled up his sleeves, and said, "We have work." They soaked beans, sliced cabbage, seasoned minced meat, wrapped spring rolls tight enough to hold secrets. Trays marched like soldiers across the small counter. The oven hummed an approving note. At 2 a.m., Stella sat briefly, head in hands, not from despair but from awe. "Look where we are," she whispered. Stanley handed her water like a sacrament. By noon, the next day, the small chops glowed on white platters, puff-puff like little suns, spring rolls crisp and golden, samosas standing with pride, chin-chin in glass jars with neat, handwritten labels, Stella's Kitchen. Guests arrived in sensible heels and Ankara wrappers. Mrs. Lawson greeted them at the door, eyeing the food table with a mother's quiet pride. Introductions began. A nurse found a scholarship form from a microcredit lead. A teacher connected with a widows group. 3 women prayed softly for a girl whose clinic bill was unpaid. Then they ate. Silence first, the good kind, then hums, then words like who made this, and where did you buy, and please, who is the caterer? Mrs. Lawson smiled and pointed to the back veranda where Stella stood discreetly, straightening napkins as if napkins were holy. Aha, one councilwoman cried. Come, my dear. Who trained you? Stella smiled. Life, Ma. Cards appeared. Phones tapped. Can you handle a church women's program on Saturday? My NGO meets next Wednesday. My office needs 20 lunchboxes twice a week. My daughter's naming ceremony. By sunset, Stella had 6 paid orders and 3 follow-up tastings. When the last guest left, Mrs. Lawson walked to her and held both hands the way she had on the first day. You didn't just feed them, she said softly. You made them proud to have hosted here. Stella exhaled. Thank you, Ma. Don't thank me, Mrs. Lawson replied. Thank your hands. That night, Stella wrote each order in her ledger, dated them, added deposits, and drew a tiny box to tick when delivered. Stanley built 2 extra trays before bed. The fan ticked. The future breathed. In the city area where Alice lived, the walls heard things women did not say out loud. Wake at 5, Joe's mother still demanded. Sweep. Boil water. Grind pepper. Bring tubers from the back. But Mama, Alice winced, hand on her lower back, this pregnancy is draining me. I gave birth to 4, the woman said. I still cooked. Laziness is the firstborn of pride. Joe returned most nights with frustration trailing him like a smell. His business partners had become the boys, then people, and finally nobody. He started talking about a capital he never had. He snapped at Alice for forgetting salt and then asked her for transport money. One afternoon, his mother's friend came visiting, eyes bright with hunger masked as politeness. That girl, Stella, what of her? She asked. The quiet one? You should have married that one. You can see with your eyes she has talent. Girls like that, if you put them in a kitchen and put a phone in their hands, money will answer. Alice stood frozen in the doorway. The truth arrived late but arrived anyway. They had wanted Stella for what she could create, not for love. They had seen free labor and business potential. The irony stung like pepper. That evening, Alice packed a small bag with 2 wrappers and a faded t-shirt. She didn't leave a note. She took her swollen feet and her swollen shame and went home to Mbano. Auntie Ngozi hugged her daughter at the door and sniffed as if smelling the truth. What happened? She asked. They are not rich, Alice said flatly. They were never rich. They wanted Stella because she would have turned water to money. They got me. I can sweep. Auntie opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again to say what proud people say when learning starts, we will be fine. They were not fine. Without Stella's market money and without Alice's monthly allowance, there had never been one. Mr. Okeke sold the goat earlier than he planned. Tobe dropped out of school just for a term. Chika cried over a broken school sandal until silence replaced tears. Salt lived at the neighbor's house and visited only when begged. Auntie Ngozi began to wake early. She fetched water. Her wrists complained. Shame is strong but not as strong as an empty pot. Let us go to the city and greet Stella, Mr. Okeke suggested one evening, staring at a wall that had no answers. He didn't say ask. Pride is sometimes a language that deletes verbs. Not yet, Auntie said. We cannot go like beggars. We are not beggars, Mr. Okeke replied, voice low. We are learners. They waited 2 more months, and the waiting taught them what humility could have taught cheaper. In Mrs. Lawson's neighborhood, Stella's kitchen stopped being a rumor and became a number saved as Stella, small chops in women's phones. She delivered on time, with clean boxes and sharp labeling, chicken samosa, spicy, vegetable spring roll, mild, puff-puff, coconut, chin-chin, cardamom. She never shorted portions. She followed up with a polite message, thank you for your order. If everything was satisfactory, kindly save our number. We appreciate your trust. She registered a bank account in the business name and taught herself mobile transfers with the quiet triumph of someone who used to count coins in the dark. Stanley printed simple stickers, white background, clean font, Stella's kitchen, fresh. Clean. Consistent. A line below at Stella's kitchen underscoring, the neighbor's teenage son helped her open the page and posted photos taken under the boys' quarters window where midday light was kind. Mrs. Lawson recommended her carefully, never like charity, always like recognition. She is reliable, she told people. And reliability is a gift. One weekday, a small cafe owner asked if Stella could supply 50 lunchboxes for an NGO training, jollof rice, grilled chicken, salad, and small chops on the side. Stella hesitated at the scale. Stanley squeezed her hand under the plastic table. "We can do it," she said. "Deposit first, balance on delivery." They worked through the night. Stanley's trays moved in and out like breath. The kitchen smelled like promise. Delivery was smooth. Payment landed before plates returned. Stella ticked the tiny box she'd drawn beside the order in her ledger and whispered, "Thank you." On a Saturday morning when the sun had not fully decided its heat, the gate man came to the boys' quarters. Visitors asking for Madam Stella. Stella stepped out, wiped her hands on a clean towel, and saw Mr. Okeke, Auntie Nosy, and Alice standing by the hibiscus. Alice wore a wrapper tied too tightly and a blouse that had a tear at the shoulder she tried to hide with a pin. Her eyes were swollen, not from sleep. "Welcome," Stella said, and meant it. She didn't know how to not mean her words anymore. There was a long silence. Mr. Okeke cleared his throat, then did a thing his bones did not enjoy. He bowed his head. "My daughter," he began, "we came to ask for forgiveness and for advice." Auntie Ngozi's jaw worked like someone chewing a confession. "We were wrong," she said in a voice the compound had never heard from her. "We treated you like a tool. You were a blessing. We did not know." Alice swallowed. Words became stones in her mouth. She dropped them one by one. "I am sorry." Stella's mind returned to a dusty afternoon in Bano, no music, no blessing, no joy. She inhaled, then exhaled slowly. She did not rehearse pain. She did not perform sainthood. She chose something simpler, clarity. "I forgive you," she said. The gate leaves breathed. Forgiveness is free. But access is not. We will not return to old patterns. Mr. Okeke nodded, tears surprising his eyes. "We understand." Auntie Ngozi finally allowed her shoulders to drop. "Please, is there any small work?" "Alice is expecting." Stella looked at her cousin's face. She saw fear where pride used to live. She saw a girl who had learned the lesson the hard way. She also saw her own younger self, serving a house that never said thank you. "Come inside," Stella said gently. "Eat first." They ate. Not a feast, just food that was cooked with dignity. Afterwards, Stella spoke. "Auntie, Uncle, I can cover Chica's school fees this term and the next, on one condition: receive it as a loan to be repaid slowly when things stabilize. For Tobe, I will ask a friend at the vocational center about apprenticeship. For Alice, I don't have house help work. But I can teach her record keeping for small traders and put her on 2 days a week to help pack orders. She will be paid modestly. She must be on time." Auntie's mouth opened to argue. Mr. Okeke squeezed her hand. "We will take it," he said quickly. "Thank you." Alice nodded, eyes wet, voice small. "Thank you." "Work starts Monday," Stella said. "Come at 8. Wear flats." When they left, Stanley stepped from the shadow where he had waited, letting his wife lead. He wasn't hiding. He was honoring her. "You did well," he said. "I did right," she answered, then allowed herself to lean into his chest and breathe. 2 mornings after the Okeke's visit, a black SUV eased through the compound gate. Mrs. Lawson stepped out first, elegant as always, followed by Stanley, this time in a crisp shirt and polished shoes that seemed to remember who he really was. Good morning, my children, Mrs. Lawson said with a calm smile. May I come in? Inside the small sitting room, Stella's ledger still lay open beside a tray of chin-chin. Mrs. Lawson glanced around, eyes soft. You've done well here, my dear. Every corner of this house speaks of care. Your husband's father would be proud. Stella blinked. You knew his father? Mrs. Lawson nodded. He was my business partner and one of my closest friends. When he passed, Stanley decided to live quietly for a time. He told me he wanted to learn about people before he learned power. She turned to Stanley. It's time she knew everything. Stanley took a slow breath and faced Stella. My love, he began, the day I met you, I saw a woman who had nothing but still gave everything. I'd already seen too many people love my name and my money, never me. So I hid the shine. Stella frowned softly. Hide the shine? I never lost it, he said, voice steady. I only covered it. I asked Mrs. Lawson to help me live simply. She agreed to act as if I worked for her so I could move freely and see hearts for what they were. Mrs. Lawson smiled. That little charity event where the caterer canceled? Stanley planned it. He funded the supplies, the rentals, even the decorations. He just wanted to see what you would do if opportunity knocked once. You didn't wait for pity, you worked. You earned every bit of what followed. Stella stared, tears gathering. You mean, that was your test? Stanley nodded. I wanted to see whether you'd cook for gratitude or greed. You did it out of service. And when orders came, you never once boasted or asked for help, you built with discipline. That's when I knew, the woman I married in dust could build a kingdom in light. He opened a brown envelope and set it on the table. Inside were deeds, share certificates, and legal letters. These are my father's businesses, properties, and accounts. I own several apartment blocks, farmland, and partnerships. Mrs. Lawson has managed them while I stayed quiet. From today, we will manage them together. Stella covered her mouth, shaking. All this time, you were watching me work? I was learning from you, he said simply. Your patience taught me stewardship. Your faith taught me gratitude. You made me rich long before you knew I had money. Mrs. Lawson wiped away tears. I was only the messenger, my dear. The blessing has always been yours. Stanley took Stella's hands. The first day they gave you away like payment, I promised that the next time anyone spoke your name, it would be with honor. That promise is fulfilled. He slid a small key across the table. This opens your new shop front, your own registered company, funded by the family trust. Stella's Kitchen Limited. Everything you've earned will now grow together, openly. Stella laughed and cried all at once. I don't even know what to say. Then say what you always say, Stanley whispered. She smiled through tears. If this is God's plan for me, so be it. On a breezy afternoon, Stella and Stanley drove to Mbano in a pickup truck loaded with labeled boxes, rice, beans, soap, baby clothes, small notes inside, from Stella's kitchen, not a debt. They stopped first at Mr. Okeke's. Auntie Ngozi hugged Stella and did not let go too quickly. Mr. Okeke cried the way men cry, eyes full, face proud, words few. Stella did not stay long. She learned goodbye could be an act of love when staying would invite old ghosts. They drove on to the community hall where she had rented a small hour to speak to girls who wanted to start little businesses, soap making, acra stands, phone charging points. She drew a simple ledger on a board, date, item, cost, price, profit. If you don't write it, you can't grow it, she told them. And if you can't show it, banks will not trust you. She left 20 small exercise books, each with the same first line written in neat block letters, "My work deserves respect." On the way back to the city, Stanley drove with one hand and held hers with the other. The road slid under them like ribbon. Do you remember the calabash? She asked suddenly, the cracked one from the day of the forced marriage. I remember, he said. I think it cracked for a reason, Stella mused. To show that some traditions need new wineskins. Giving a girl like a sack of grain, may our daughters never see it. Amen, he said. Stella never asked for a mansion. She asked for room to breathe, to build, to bless. One evening, Stanley drove her to a new estate and stopped in front of a modest, beautiful home, white walls, a small garden with hibiscus that would one day grow into shade, a kitchen that made her hands itch to label jars. Whose house? She asked, smiling already and afraid to hope. Ours, he said simply. Paid for clean. Her laughter came out as a shout. She covered her mouth like a child and then cried like a woman who had seen too much dust to mistrust water. Inside, on the dining table, lay a brown envelope. Stella opened it and found incorporation papers, Stella's Kitchen Limited underneath, a larger envelope, the Stella Foundation, initial seed from their matched grant and Stanley's personal funds. Mission statement, skills for orphans and widows. First-year plan, train 50, place 20, support 10 to start. She sank into a chair. This is too much, she whispered. Stanley knelt beside her chair and rested his head on her lap. You were too much for suffering, he said. Now you are the right size for blessing. They prayed, no long words, just thanks. Announcements can be vanity. But hiding light under a bowl helps no one. 2 months after moving into the house, Stella stood on a small stage at Mrs. Lawson's charity network, now triple the size because success attracts courage. She told her story simply, no villainizing, no boasting. I was given away like a burden, she said. But God sent me to a man who waited for my heart, and to a madam who believed in honest work. If you are here and you feel small, hear me, small is not nothing. Small, when clean and consistent, grows. She turned to the side, hand open. This is my husband, Stanley. He taught me to rest. He also hid a legacy until I was ready to hold it without fear. Polite laughter, then warm applause. Mrs. Lawson joined them, tears in her eyes. Those who know me know I don't cry cheaply. But I am proud today, not because Stella bakes. Because she builds books, habits, people. When you're looking for partners for clean initiatives, look for workers like this. David signed a partnership MOU with the Stella Foundation that day, training kitchens in 2 neighboring communities. Women who graduated would get mini grants matched by local churches and businesses. Alice, 7 months pregnant, sat in the second row, pen in hand, taking notes like a diligent student. When the applause swelled, she clapped too, not as a cousin who had once mocked, but as a woman who had learned that honor multiplies. Within 3 months, Stella's Kitchen Limited moved into its new location, a clean, tiled storefront with a glass sign that gleamed, fresh, clean, consistent. She hired women who reminded her of who she'd been, widows, orphans, girls who needed a chance. 2 worked the ovens, 1 handled accounts, and Alice, now 7 months pregnant, helped with packaging and delivery logs. Every payday, Stella gathered them to pray. May our hands never deceive, may our work stay honest, may our table always feed one more. In Bano, the Okeke house grew quiet and humble. They planted cassava again, shared food with neighbors, and wrote letters of thanks instead of demands. Pride had moved out. At year's end, Stanley took Stella to a new estate outside the city. He stopped before a modest white and gold duplex surrounded by young hibiscus plants. Whose house? She asked, laughing nervously. Ours, he said simply. Paid for cleanliness. The first of many built by faith, not show. Inside, on the dining table, lay 2 framed documents. Certificate of Incorporation, Stella's Kitchen Ltd. Charter of the Stella Foundation, Skills for Orphans and Widows. Stella touched the glass with trembling fingers. You kept your promise. We kept it, Stanley corrected. You gave me purpose, I gave it form. They knelt and prayed, the sound of gratitude filling the quiet rooms. The moral of the story is: never despise humble beginnings, clean work grows like a righteous tree. Pride is expensive, humility saves money and hearts. Love that waits is stronger than wealth that waves. If you plant fairness, you will harvest favor. Dear listeners, what part of Stella's journey touched you most, the forced marriage, the city breakthrough, or the final reveal? Tell us in the comments. If this story blessed you, like, share, and subscribe to African Tales and Hearts. Turn on the bell so you never miss our next story where pain becomes purpose and love finds a voice. God bless you.